let's take a look at this. Now, I need to warn you ahead of time. There's something else you need to know about Dr. Peterson. He's a little salty. He uses the Lord's name a number of times, and I'm not sure why. But he does, and so just so you're aware. What? Oh, I thought you had said you were going to do it the other way. And so let's listen in.
Big problem here. The problem is, it's true. You're oppressed, you're oppressed, you're oppressed, you're oppressed. God only knows why. Maybe you're too short, or you're not as beautiful as you could be, or your grandparent was a serf, likely, because almost everybody's great-grandparent was. It's like, and you're not as smart as you could be, and you have a sick relative, and you have your own physical problems, and it's like, frankly, you're a mess. And you're oppressed in every possible way, including your ancestry and your biology, and the entire sum of human history has conspired to produce victimized you with all your individual pathological problems. It's like, yes, true. Okay, but the problem is that it is true. And so if you take the oppressed, you have to fractionate them and fractionate them. It's like, you're a woman. Yeah, okay, well, I'm a black woman. Well, I'm a black woman who has 2 children. Well, I'm a black woman who has 2 children, and one of them isn't very healthy. And then, well, I'm a Hispanic woman, and I have a genius son who doesn't have any money so that he can't go to university. And, I had a hell of a time getting across the border. It was really hard on me to get my citizenship. My husband is an alcoholic brute. It's like, well, yeah, that sucks too. And so, let's fix all your oppression. And we'll take every single thing into account, and then we'll fix yours too. We'll take every single thing into account. It's like, no, you won't, because you can't. You can't. It is technically impossible. First of all, you can't even list all the ways that you're oppressed. Second, how are you going to weight them? Third, who's going to decide? And that's the bloody thing. Who's going to decide? That's the thing. Well, what's the answer in the West? It's like, in free markets, oh yeah, Christ will never be able to solve this problem. No one can solve it. What are we going to do about that? We're going to outsource it to the marketplace. You're going to take your sorry, pathetic being, and you're going to try to offer me something that maybe I want. And I'm going to take my sorry, pathetic being, and I'm going to say, well, all things considered, as well as I can understand them, maybe I could give you this much money, which is actually a promise, for that thing. And you've packed all of your damn oppression into the price. And I've packed all my oppression into the willingness to pay it. And that solution sucks. It's a bad solution. But compared to every other solution, man, it's why 10% of us have freedom. And so there's a tremendous illogic at the bottom of this. It's like, you have to fractionate the oppressed all the way down to the level of the individual. Well, that's what the West figured out. There's a couple of figures who are at the mythological roots of our culture, and people get upset with me because I bring in religious themes, but I understand some things about mythology and religion, and it's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. So
okay, so let's just stop there for a second. Totally agree. Up to this point, all the stuff about oppression, this whole idea, intersectionality, all this absurdity that is running rampant in our society today, it leads to what he's calling fractionation, everyone being fractionated, because you can't just have women who are oppressed. You end up with black women who are oppressed. And then it's not just black women, it's black women lesbians who are oppressed. And then it's black women lesbians who are left-handed. And then it just keeps dividing and dividing and dividing. And eventually it comes down to the individual, because there's nobody that has the exact setup that you do, the exact set of problems that you do. See, so it ends up dividing us from everybody. There can't be a meaningful functioning society when we're all sitting here going, I'm being oppressed by everybody else. Everybody else has a different set of these issues. And so that's what he's addressing. But then you just had the archetypal person. Jesus is the archetypal person, the primitive standard in Western civilization. He gets nailed to a cross. Except that's not the New Testament message. No one takes my life from me. I lay it down of my own accord. If you don't have if you don't have an empty tomb, okay? Let me put it this way. If the light of the empty tomb does not shine upon your understanding of Jesus and his work and his mission, it will remain abject darkness. And as such, you will be able to mold it into anything you want. I mean, liberation theology in South America deeply influenced current Pope. Liberation theology in South America. The suffering Jesus is central to liberation theology. But since it's been disconnected from its biblical definition and root, its centrality upon the purpose of God in the gospel and things like that, it can be perverted into anything. And so making the connection between the suffering of this life and Jesus misses Jesus' own teaching as to why the Son of Man came and why the Son of Man lays down his life. That's not what it is. Now, given that Western culture historically has been deeply influenced by the architecture of the church, by the constant presence of the cross, by forms of Christianity, you can see that imprint all over the place, and you can see how unregenerate men have tried to, find a way to, work it in and redefine it. But we as Christians should hear these things and go, well, that wasn't Jesus's view. That's the world's attempt to appropriate Jesus's words and actions without actually accepting his own authority. That's sort of important. And that's going to end up entering into the discussion of suffering that's coming up.
What do you do about that? Well, I thought about that for a long time too. It's like, well, you don't get together in a damn mob, because all that does is allow you to be as horrible as you could possibly imagine and suffer from none of the consequences. That's a bad idea. So how about we don't do that? Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it and try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. Well, that's a truth. I read a lot about the terrible things that people have done to each other. You just cannot even imagine it. It's so awful. So you don't want to be someone like that. Now, do you have a reason to be? Yes. You have lots of reasons to be. God, there's reasons to be resentful about your existence. Everyone you know is going to die. You too. And there's going to be a fair bit of pain along the way, and lots of it's going to be unfair. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're resentful. It's like, act it out and see what happens. You make everything you're complaining about infinitely worse. There's this idea that hell is a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse. So you think, well, what do you do about that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is like. It's suffering. That's what the religious people have always said. Life is suffering. Yes. Well, who wants to admit that? Well, just think about it. Well, so what do you do in the face of that?
Okay, so let's just comment. Life is suffering, but there's no question that, and this is one of the disconnections, I think, with some of the odder expressions of modern Christianity, that central aspect of the fact that it's God's intention and God's purpose that his people will suffer, and that he's with them in their suffering, and that suffering is in some sense glorifying to God and redemptive for us. not redemptive as in adding to the sufferings of Christ. But you do have Paul's own statement that we are filling up what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ. He says to the Colossians. Well, it's not like, that's not a redemptive context, but it is the context of the people of God united with Christ. And he suffered, he was a man of sorrows, and so it's obvious that his people will as well. But Christians have always believed that there's a reason for that suffering. God didn't create it to be that way initially, in the sense that suffering is just simply the default. There's the fall. It's all seen within the context of redemption. It's all seen, again, it just becomes a dark shell if it is not illuminated by the light of the empty tomb. The purposes of God demonstrated in Christ, in him. And so when we, take up your suffering, well, that's not really a biblical phrase. It is bear patiently your suffering, knowing that there is a purpose in God's sovereignty, knowing that you as an individual possess eternal life. God will use this to make you more like Christ, that you are an ambassador for Christ, that you're bringing the kingdom of God into this kingdom of darkness. It's much more the issue of suffering and light and the reaction of rebel sinners. And see, rebel sinners, regeneration, that kind of thing doesn't have... Where do you place that psychologically? Where do you place that evolutionarily? There isn't a place to put it. It can't stand consistently within, again, we're dealing with worldview stuff here. And there are times when in God's grace, what we call common grace, at least some of us call common grace, that unregenerate men can see what's best for all men. And that's what Dr. Peterson's doing. Nothing's accomplished by constantly whining. We tell our kids that. Well, we used to. Evidently, that's a minority activity any longer. Quit complaining and make it better. That was common in my day. Now you just, pander and make everyone bow down to the one who's screaming and whining. That's where you have someone such as Dr. Peterson who sees what the issue is, but his current worldview, which obviously I think we as Christians need to be praying God would reveal himself to Dr. Peterson and he would see the Lord of glory and bow the knee to him. There's an inconsistency here. And what you end up with, what I'm going to hear here in a second, is basically, to be honest with you, doesn't quite make it all the way up to Pelagianism. But it's pretty much, hey, Pelagius had a very high moral standard. Pelagius had a very high moral standard. It just wasn't a Christian standard because it didn't have a Christian anthropology. And he had a very high moral standard, Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Come on, man. But so does the Marine Corps. I mean, how many people have we seen that were really helped a lot by the discipline of the military? That didn't change their hearts. That it can't change their hearts. Something to keep in mind.
Suffering. Try to reduce it. Start with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself together for Christ's sake so that when your father dies, you're not whining away in a corner and you can help plan the funeral and you can stand up solidly so that people can rely on you. That's better. Don't be a damn victim. Of course you're a victim. Jesus, obviously. Put yourself together. And then maybe if you put yourself together, you know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you if you'll admit it. There's a few things you could polish up a little bit, that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, and then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having them be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're like doomed to spend Christmas with.
See, that's why it's so popular, is, I mean, everybody hears that, everybody understands that. But at the same time, what did you just hear? The salty language aside, what did you just hear? Clean yourself up. Be the kind of guy that helps out at the funeral. Well, this is basic Greek philosophical, ethical, and moral exhortation, commonly, seen down through the centuries. It's just, it's shocking that this is considered to be something new along those lines, because this was the standard stuff not that long ago, and it's just been banished by the communist left in our society. But you and I both know, and I'm saying you and I to Christians, you and I both know you can't do that. Oh, I'm not saying that there's surface level moral and ethical changes. You can decide, there are people decide, you know what, I'm sick and tired of being overweight and constantly sick. I'm going to get myself in shape. And as a result, instead of stopping by McDonald's and getting that quarter pound with cheese, large fries, and a Coke, you actually, eat half the quarter pounder, 3 fries, and get a water, which would probably be more than enough. And people can do things like that. But we know as Christians that there's something missing here. And that is, what's your motivation? You can't address here issues of selfishness and self-preservation. And how do you have a basis for really addressing true Christian morality where you do these things out of service to your Creator? Where's the Creator here? Where is the ultimate true purpose for what you're doing and why you're doing it? It's great to call people to act like human beings, but the Western concept of what a human being is not a Jungian concept of what a human being is. It's the creature. Remember the story we started off with? It's what that guy at the University of Washington hates, loathes, because he knows it's true. He knows it's true, and he knows he lives in rebellion against it every day. I'm not talking about Dr. Peterson. I'm talking about that other guy, Barash, or whatever his name was. He loathes it, and so he wants to destroy it. But that's what's missing here. That's what needs to be there.
So then you fix yourself up a little bit, kind of humbly, because, God, you're a fixer-upper if there ever was one. And then you got to figure out, well, can you figure out how to make peace with your idiot brother? And probably not, because he's just as dumb as you, so how the hell are you going to manage that? And so then maybe you get somewhere that way, and your family's sort of functioning, and you find out, well, that kind of relieved a little bit of suffering, although it reduced the opportunities for spiteful revenge, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. And so then you get your family together a little bit, and you're a little clued in then, at least a bit, because you've done something difficult that's actually difficult. You're a little wiser, and so then maybe you could put a tentative finger out beyond the family and try to change some little thing without wrecking it. It's like, our society is complex, and we teach our students that they could just fix it. It's like, go fix a military helicopter and see how far you get with that. It's like, what are you going to do? You're like a chimp with a wrench. Whack! Oh, look, it's better. It's like, no, it's not better. Things are complicated, and to fix things is really hard. And you have to be like a golden tool to fix things, and you're not. So, and that's the other message of the West. It's like, how do you overcome the suffering of life? And I'm not saying it's only the message of the West. How do you overcome the suffering of life? Is be a better person. That's how you do it. Well, that's hard. It takes responsibility. And I think, if you said to someone, you want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters. That's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters.
Okay, just as a Christian, why? I mean, I agree. Everything you do matters because God has made you in his image and he is accomplishing his purpose, and there's going to be a day of judgment, and everything you do matters because it's a part of that fabric that God is weaving to his own glory. And I get it, but how, as an evolutionary secular, what do you mean it matters? You die, you go to dust. Secularism has no foundation for bearing up this appropriate and right exhortation by one human being to other human beings. Buck it up, man. Grow up. Stop whining. Start serving others. Do something meaningful with your life. Quit playing video games and start serving the community. Do something meaningful. Don't be a burden to other people. Be a man. Be a woman. It's good to be a man and good to be a woman. Those are good things. All of these things are right and appropriate things to say, but there's only one worldview that can ground that consistently all the way through. And it's not an evolutionary Christianity is mythology worldview. The statements are true, but what makes them true? What will keep them true, even when the other side, when the communists and the socialists and the leftists and everybody else trying to divide everybody from everybody else, when they get enough time to, they can't do it on TV, obviously, but they get enough time to think through some objections, it's got to be consistent. And who has that consistent answer? Well, there's something to think about.
So you're going to have to carry that with you. Or do you want to just forget about the whole meaning thing and then you don't have any responsibility because who the hell cares? And you can wander through life doing whatever you want, gratifying impulsive desires for how useful that's going to be. And you're stuck in meaninglessness, but you don't have any responsibility. Which one do you want? Well, ask yourself, which one are you pursuing? And you'll find
Now, real quick. So you either take responsibility and find out that's hard and make a difference in the world, or then you just go through life selfishly, just spread your genotype around as much as possible. But since there's no purpose, then it's meaninglessness. So which is it going to be? Well, think about that for a second. How do you get meaningfulness out of the mere attempt to be morally good, however you define that? What makes that meaningful if, when you die, you turn back to space dust and that's it? There is no judgment. There is no impact upon the future. There is no... Where's the connection there? That's why, again, I say you can hear all these truthful things, but truthful statements have to have a foundation that holds them up when the pushback comes. And it's only the Christian faith that provides that.
Rapidly, that it isn't the majority of your soul that's pursuing the whole meaning thing, because, well, look what you have to do that. You have to take on the fact that life is suffering. You have to put yourself together in the face of that. Well, that's hard. Christ, it's amazing people can even do it. I'm stunned every day when I go outside and it isn't a riot with everything burning. Because really, God, you talk to people, it's like...
Now, I'm stunned too, but the reason that I'm not overly stunned when I walk outside is because there is one who's restraining the evil of man. But I also know that when he withdraws that hand of restraint, that's exactly what it will be outside. There's a difference in the approach.
I knew this guy. He'd been in a motorcycle accident and it really ruined him. And he was like a linesman, working on the power. And he was working with someone who had Parkinson's disease. And they had complementary inadequacies. And so two of them could do the job of one person, and so they're out there fixing power lines in the freezing cold, despite the fact that one was 3/4 wrecked with a motorcycle accident and the other one had Parkinson's. It's like, that's how our civilization works. It's like, there's all these ruined people out there, they've got problems like you can't believe. Off they go to work and do things they don't even like, and look, the lights are on. My God, it's unbelievable. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And we're so ungrateful. College students, the postmodern types, they're so ungrateful.
So ungrateful. You know, every Thanksgiving we talk about this, but grateful to whom? Who are they who are they supposed to be grateful to? Why should a random collection of molecules that is going to become an even more random collection of molecules to the point of death, why should that random collection of molecules be grateful? You see, there's so much borrowing from a meaningfully theistic, personal theistic, creator-based religious system here that goes against the psychology and the evolutionary stuff, and you know, the evolutionary theory can't give you a meaningful basis for why you should be grateful.
You know, they don't know that they're surrounded by just a bloody miracle. It's a miracle that all this stuff works, that all you crazy chimpanzees that don't know each other can sit in the same room for 2 hours sweltering away without tearing each other apart, because that's what chimps do. So, anyways, so what happened? Well, I made some videos and I got to the bottom of some things, at least as far as I can tell, so I told you what the bottom is, and then I got this idea about what you might do about it, which isn't my idea. It's not my idea. It's an old idea. It's far older than Christianity. It's old. It's the oldest story of mankind. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Make the suffering in the world less. Well, that's the way forward, as far as I can tell, if there is any way forward. And that's what's under assault by the postmodernists. So look out, because they know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly why they're doing it. And that's what it looks like to me. So, that's it.
So, you can take that down, there we go. So there you go. Put yourself together. Well, yeah. You know, I like the idea of telling folks, put yourself together. But when I do that, I'm saying God made you in his image. You are responsible before him. And he is going to judge you. There is going to be a day of judgment. That's what's missing there. And that's what's in Jesus' teaching.